It's 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and where else would I be but here with you? DJ Stutz here with Little Hearts Academy and Imperfect Heroes podcast. I was homesick today with this cold, so I've got my water, and we hope to get through this without too big of a coughing fit. Sorry. Today, I am really excited to be talking about the differences between punishment versus discipline. And sometimes that line can seem pretty narrow. Other times it might seem pretty obvious. Sorry. So what are we thinking then with discipline versus punishment? I mean, just the fact that we're talking about it tells you that at least I have an opinion that one is better than the other. I will also tell you that I have crossed over to punishment from discipline, several times. It's part of being a parent. You get wiped out, you get tired, you get frustrated, you have money problems, you're worried about rent, you've got things going on with your work, you've got a ton of things that are going on. Maybe there are issues with your spouse or extended family members. Maybe some friends are struggling with some things. And so we're dealing with those issues as well. And sometimes when we're dealing with those issues, we kind of move over into that realm of punishment without even realizing it, without even recognizing it. So it's more of a knee-jerk kind of a thing than really a planned out plan of how am I going to manage things. So we all do it. Last week we were talking about giving yourself a break and realizing that, okay, I made a mistake. Don't beat yourself up too much over it. Just think about how you can do better. So one of the things that Bailey and I, so this week, the episode that's available right now, awesome. And I've tried a new format where I'm going to have Bailey Olsen back frequently. I just really like talking to her. So, full disclosure, she's my niece. She lives in Michigan, and she is a teacher. She is a gymnastics coach. She went to college on a gymnastics scholarship. She married the quarterback of the football team, who he is now, I think, an accountant or something with his MBA, which he got from Notre Dame. And she's got two amazing kids. And so now she's coaching gymnastics. She's teaching school. She's also subbing on days when she doesn't have work. She teaches at a charter school where they're in person, I think 2 or 3 days a week, and then the other days they're all doing Zoom and homework. And so she has some time where she can be able to sub in the school district where her kids actually go. And then she has a way of being in the classroom. So that's pretty cool. She's thought about that as a nice workaround. And we talk about that even a little bit. But we really wanted to share how when we really plan ahead and we think ahead, we put intentions out there that we can improve. And really, isn't that all we can do is just improve? Try to do better than yesterday. Try to do better than this morning. Try to do better than we did last hour. Or even just turn it around in the moment when you realize that you're yelling, that you're angry, you're giving a consequence that really doesn't have anything to do with what happened, right? So let's say he kicked the dog, right? Your child kicked the dog, and you're very upset over that. Poor little puppy, correct? You don't want your child to be an animal abuser as he gets or she gets older. And so you send them to their room. How are those connected to each other? And so we really need to pause and think about those things. So we know the things that our kids are capable of doing. Or oftentimes we can see things happening because it's repetitive. So they constantly tease their brother. They constantly are, going after the dog. They're constantly when they get mad, they'll throw a tantrum. They'll throw a block or whatever happens to be in their hand. Some of these things are repetitive patterns for our kids. So we can plan that when this happens, what am I going to do? We can make that plan ahead of time. Even write it down so that process of writing, and there's a lot of scientific studies that go along with this, but the process of writing it down changes it into a different part of our brain where we'll have a higher chance of retaining it better. And so if you can even write down, this is what I'm going to do when Susie throws her Barbie at Joey. Because that's something that happens, fairly frequently. Then we can also look and see, when is this happening? Right? When is it, like right before dinner? Is it right before nap time or maybe after nap time? Is it when they just get home from school? Or now the hiccups. Honestly, such a time. Anyway. Or after you've picked them up from childcare. When are the times? And so maybe take a week and notice and write it down. Have a little calendar or a little journal, or even if it's just a piece of scrap paper that you're noticing when things kind of happen. Then you can make a plan, and that is discipline. When you come and you've thought about it, you've talked about it with your spouse, or if you're a single parent, maybe you have a best friend or a sibling or your mom or dad that you can kind of talk it through with. And so you're planning it out. You're going to be disciplining more. Punishment is when you're just, I've had it, right? And boy, haven't we all had days like that. And I don't know if there's a parent alive who hasn't said those words. I've had it, right? And then we dole out whatever first comes to our mind, which may or may not be appropriate, but I would say most of the time for me anyway, it was when I was not quite as appropriate as when I was deliberate. Does that make sense? And so when you take time to plan out, oh, this happens around this time. Well, this happens when we're trying to get out the door in the morning. This happens when I'm trying to cook dinner and they're just screaming and yelling at each other and I'm trying to get dinner done. All of those things, notice it. And I would even just take a week and give yourself some grace and take that week to really notice what's going on. Who is the conflict with? What is the conflict over? Where is the conflict taking place? All of that stuff. And then once you see these patterns, you're going to be better able to make that plan so that you're disciplining and not just punishing. And so how do you manage it then when you're not with your kids? Let's say you go to pick up your child from childcare or after school, you're picking them up and there's the teacher waiting to talk to you, right? Been there. Sorry. And it's like, oh, not again. I can't take it anymore, right? And so, okay, what did she do now, right? What did he do now? What is it this time? And you just kind of feel overwhelmed. And sometimes you might feel like it's constant. It's constant. This never ends. Why are you doing this? But let's get some more information from that teacher. Okay, does this happen often? Yes or no? If it's just a one-off thing, okay, I'll talk to Joey about it. I'll talk to Susie about it. And then you can have a talk and come up with a plan with your child. Other times it might be like, yeah, this happens frequently throughout the day. All right, I know you're busy right now. You're trying to get things done. Let's plan a time when we can get together. And the nice thing is that now you can get together over Zoom. You know, of course you can do the phone call or you can do in person, but you try and set up a time where you can really have a more in-depth conversation. And you're going to ask questions, just kind of like the ones we just talked about. When is this happening? Who is this happening with? Where is this happening? You know, what is the predecessor? What are the consequences of this happening in school or in class or on the playground or wherever it may be? And so when you've got a better picture of what's going on, then you as a team, hey Carolyn, how you doing? It's so good to see you. Once you have a better picture of what's going on, then you and the teacher as a team can come up with, all right, what can we do to make this better? We notice it's happening at this time. What can we do to try and circumvent that or make it happen in a better way? Oh, thanks, Carolyn, I love you. And then now you have a plan. It's not just getting mad at your kid. I'm tired of this happening. As being a kid who frequently got into trouble, sorry, I have to put my glasses on to see a comment. Oh, well, thank you, Caroline. So as a parent who had to do this often, and it would get very tiring, and it would feel like your kid is getting blamed for everything, and which may or may not be true. And so it just feels that way. But when you can come and talk at a time when it's not, you know, they're first telling you and you're dealing with it, you've had time to process, and then you've set up a time to go back and talk, then you can come up with a thing as a team. And then you and your child's teacher, you know, can work together instead of, you know, just being angry and frustrated. Oh, really? So Caroline, so you say you're going through that now. It'd be really interesting to maybe get some details and we can talk and get some ideas. I'd be glad to see that. I'm gonna have to put my glasses back on. No contacts today. Have a cold. So the glasses will be on and off. So some of the things then is having your child then, I would maybe talk just myself and the teacher at first and get an idea of the teacher's point of view and not really interjecting much, but really listening to what is it the teacher is saying and how is this affecting the class? How is this affecting my child? Where are they, you know, in this process? And so I would ask those kind of questions, you know, that we've just been talking about. And then I would go home and I would talk to my child and not with, I'm sick and tired of this, da-da-da-da-da, right? I might say, it sounds like things are kind of rough in Mr. So-and-so's class or in Miss So-and-so's class, or maybe it's during recess or PE, or maybe it's during some of those things. And so you can talk and say, what do you think is going on? Yeah. So I think, Caroline, so she was saying that she's already tried to talk to the teachers and the principal, and they just blame the kid. And so that may or may not be the reality of what's going on, but then why is this happening though? And so just asking questions so that we're not getting mad at the teacher or the principal, but we're just sitting and listening. And I have found, because I've worked with so many parents, Caroline, you know that, over the years, that I think doing this reverse psychology of what I do with my parents when there's an issue, is to just let them talk it out and say, well, this is what's going on. This is what my child is telling me, la, 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 la. And I don't argue with them. I don't try to correct them. I let them talk until they're done. And then they're kind of surprised. They're expecting you to, jump in and say, well, you're not doing this, or well, what about this? And so they kind of get surprised. And then you've got them kind of off. And then say, I understand. This must be really difficult for everyone. I know it's difficult for myself. I know it's difficult for my child. I'm sure it's difficult for you as well. So what do you see as an answer? And then sit and be quiet until they can, talk to you. And then they may or, may not. They might say, well, we want to do this and this and this. Okay, so how does that work? And it's like, help me understand how what it is that you want to do is going to improve the situation for whichever child it is. And they can talk and say, okay. And so I think instead of, saying, well, that won't work, this won't work, that won't work, and you may know it's not going to work, but let them figure it out and say, all right, well, I'll talk to my child. And even if you could have then the child come in at some point, either right after that meeting or whatever, I'd like to have when they're complaining about the child isn't in the room. This goes for even when you and your spouse are discussing how to handle a kid and you're really frustrated that the child isn't there hearing you talk about them. Between you and your spouse, between you and your sister, or not sister, you and your child's teacher, or whatever, that you are not letting them hear that. And then once you've come up with a plan or you've come up with some things, you can invite the child in. And, part of this, it's called restorative justice. I wish there was a better name for it, but part of it is every party gets to say exactly what their opinion is on what's going on without being interrupted. Does that make sense? So if the principals had the chance to talk, the teachers had a chance to talk, the parents had a chance to talk, we're going to let the child come in and have a chance to talk and say, la, 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 la. And if people start to interrupt them, say, excuse me, yeah, I didn't interrupt you. And so I think that he needs to be heard. And let him say whatever, or her, I don't know if it's a boy or girl, and let them say whatever it is that is what they think is causing the behavior. They get to say their point of view. Then when we're done, instead of saying, this is what we're going to do, we can say something like, to the child, how do you see this problem getting better? And if your child says, I don't see it getting better, then we're not thinking well enough. So let's stop, pause. I want you to think for a second. And you tell us, adults, what is it that you think would help the situation? And their answer may or may not be realistic, but they're being heard. And that is so important for these kiddos, because so many times they just feel like nobody's listening to me. Nobody cares about what I'm going through. And some of it may be self-inflicted, right? Maybe they have just gotten super tired of things. Maybe they're not doing their homework. Maybe they are being disruptive in class. And so another question that we can ask is, so do you see that when you do this, how does that affect the other kids in the classroom? You're not telling them how it affects. You're asking them how they perceive it's going to affect, or if it's even in the home. When you do this to your little sister or your big brother or whatever, how do you think they feel? Right? And if it's just a parent or just a teacher that's there, maybe there was another child involved at the school. I'm sure there's another child involved in the family. If you've got an only child that's, arguing with their siblings, get them to a mental health professional. That's not right. But so at home, it's going to be another sibling. And so even let them say, let's hear your side of the story. And you tell your child or your, whoever's turn it is to listen. They listen to you. Now we need to listen to them, not interrupting. And if your child starts to interrupt, then you say, oh, no, you had your turn. Now it's so-and-so's turn. I don't know if any of that is making any sense. But the calmer you stay, the more your child is going to listen to you. They're going to learn to negotiate in calmness, right? And it's going to take a while. And this isn't something that Bailey and I talk about this in the episode. It's not like you wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm never going to yell at my kids again. I'm done. And then you're really done. No. Right? It's going to take practice. And there's going to be some fallbacks. And then you look at it, reassess, and move forward. It's the same thing with your kids. I mean, if we screw up like that as adults, they've had a lot less time on this earth. They've had many fewer years, I guess. I don't know if that's grammatically correct, but they've had fewer years to manage their emotions, to manage their thought processes, to learn to think of someone else's point of view as they make decisions, as they move forward. And we want to help them get to that point. If we can, that's going to help them be way more successful as they grow up and get older. So whether they're in elementary school and we give them those tools, they'll have those to use more as they get older. And even if they're older and we're trying to work them through it, they will have more tools. Realize that the older they are, as you're trying to help them with these tools, as you're trying to help yourself use these tools, right? It's going to be, the older they get, the more time it's going to take for them to get it turned around, right? How many of us have habits that we've had for years or maybe even decades, and they're really hard to break? In fact, Bailey and I, in the podcast this week, we talked about how she didn't know that I used to be a 911 dispatcher and worked at a police department, and how this was before she was born, but when you work in a police department, language gets a little dicey, and I picked up some of that. Nothing too horrible, but, more than I felt comfortable with, because I felt like when I was using that kind of language, I became more aggressive. I actually would get more hyped up. And if I'm trying to live a life that is based in joy and kindness and grace, how does that fit in with that? And so, for a long time, and I always laughed because I only had 3 main words, and 2 of them you could find in the Bible. But still not okay. And so it's taken me years to try and weed that out. And am I 100% successful? Nope. No. But I'm still trying, right? Okay. It's the same thing with us, with when we have a habit of reacting a certain way to a situation, and that reaction really doesn't make things better. In fact, it might ignite the fire. It might rile everybody up. When you're calm and you just calmly stand for what and they can be doing whatever they're all doing, and you're staying calm, but you're staying firm with what you say. I understand. I think I understand. Let me tell you what I'm hearing from you. But you're using that tone. You're using that tone with your kids. You're using that tone with maybe another parent who's upset with your child over something, or a teacher. But when you are calm and use that tone, it really brings everything down. Here's the thing, though, that's interesting to me. If your kids are used to you yelling and getting upset and whatever, and then you've decided, I'm going to try and chill it down a little bit, they might get worse for a little bit. And here's why. It's change. And they are used to what they're used to. And so when you react differently with something, they're like, whoa, wait. That's not right. Mom's supposed to do this, or dad is supposed to. I'm used to them acting this way. I know how to relate this way. And you can say, yeah, I'm gonna try and fix that. I'm not happy with the way I've been yelling, or I'm not happy with the way I've been getting upset, or I'm not happy with the way of whatever. But I'm gonna try and fix that. So now that they're in on it, they might test you to see if they can break you. And kids, young as 3, you're going to see that. Teenagers, for sure, you're going to see that. And they're going to see how resolved you are to stay with that. So when you goof up, and you will, it's just how it goes. If you want to hear the stories, talk to my kids. There's plenty of them, right? But when you goof up, just as soon as you catch yourself, you're going to say, oh, wait. Stop. This isn't the way I wanted it to go. Take a breath. All right. Here, let's talk about this, right? And the older your child gets, even kids at the age of, I've had kids as young as 3. So 3 on up, you can sit down with them and say, here's what I'm seeing. And it's really hurting our family. Like, your brothers or your sisters are upset, or your friends are upset. I feel sad seeing that, when you act this way, I feel like something's going on inside of you that is hard for you. And I would love to help you through it. How can we do better? And let them be part of that conversation. That's discipline. That's not punishment, right? And so I've heard parents say, well, I know that, their phone doesn't really have anything to do with what's going on, but that's really all they care about. That's all they respond to. And so I just have to take the phone away. Hang on, I'm going to take a drink. So I still don't think that's right. I think that as we talk and say, I know that it's normal for me to take the phone away because you didn't do your homework. And maybe we can talk about, this is homework time. And so during homework, we'll put the phone away. The sooner you get done with your homework, maybe something like that, but let them talk about it. What do you think is getting in the way of, I don't know, whatever it is, doing homework, helping out, being kind to a sibling, helping grandma, I don't know, whatever it is that's going on. Have a family council about it. If your kids are even, I'd say at 5 on up, having a family council and talking about it together and saying, okay, guys, this is what I'm seeing. This is my point of view of how I'm seeing what's going on. So, Sam, I would love to hear what you think is going on with this. They'll get used to the process that Sam will get a turn, and then Joey will get a turn, and then Susie will get a turn, and how many kids you have. And then once everyone's had a chance to say their opinion about what is going on, right? Then we can say, all right, wow, so I'm hearing Sam is thinking this, But Joey is thinking something very different. And then Susie's thinking this. And all of you are right. None of you are wrong because that's your perception. But let's think about what is one thing that you can do. I'm only asking for one thing that you can do to maybe make it a little better. Is there something that you can kind of calm down on? Is there something that you can help out with? Is there something, whatever. But they get to give one solution to the problem. And then you can see if there's a commonality that you can try, or, maybe it is that Joey needs to try this and Sam needs to try that. Maybe the solutions are more individual to them, but you're having this conversation as a family, and you've decided that you're going to be calm through the whole thing, and that when if they start yelling at each other, just say, you may need to stand. And sometimes I've done this before. Just stand up and give each one a hug while they're yelling, and just say, I love you so much. If you have your spouse with you, your spouse can take on half, you take on half, and just say, see, we're yelling. This is what I'm talking about. I want us to treat each other well and to love each other. So, maybe just intervening, but doing it in that calm way can help. I don't know. But I hope you'll listen to our podcast from this week. And so it's called Punishment versus Discipline. It's with Bailey. And we're talking kind of as co-hosts and sharing ideas and experiences. So just like I'm the oldest of 7, Bailey is the oldest of 7 as well. And so we have a lot of similarities. Just, I'm a lot older than she is. She's just in her 30s. But so we can share those things and listen in as Bailey shares some of her ideas. I'm sharing some of my ideas. We're telling stories on each other. Actually, we're telling stories on ourselves, on some of the goofy things that we've done in raising kids and in trying to make things work. So, and here, I'm going to put these glasses on one more time and check. I don't know. Claire, or Kara, can you let me know if this gave you any ideas at all of something maybe to try? You can let me know. And so next week, though, so April is National Autism Awareness Month. And so I have 2 episodes during the month of April that are on autism and working with children who are, they call it neurologically diverse, but just have different ways of processing and thinking. And it's not just autism that we talk about. We're also talking about ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, all of those things that neurologically can affect our kids, and the way that they relate to the world, the way that they relate to us, and the way that we relate to them. And so next week is one of those. I've got an expert. She's amazing, actually. Her name is Rose Griffin. So we'll talk more about that next week. And so please listen into our episode. And while you're there, leave a 5-star rating. If you're not already following me on Instagram at Imperfect Heroes Podcast, please do so. I'd love to see you there. And I'm getting to the point where I am going to be able to start doing more lives on Instagram and just talking about things and sending out just quick tips and ideas, some little hacks here and there that you can use with your kids. And so until next week, let's find joy in parenting. Good night, everyone.